University. And I will, like you said, I will be going over creating question banks and then inputting them into quizzes and talking a little bit about the quiz settings and some options that you may want to consider when either helping faculty or if you are the faculty in creating the actual quizzes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with my slides. There we go. Okay. I'm going to also demonstrate how to use the different features, and I also have a couple of resource links that I made sure were updated just because Canvas kind of changed some of the URLs, and I just learned that in my previous presentation, so I did make sure to have the more updated versions. So why use question banks? Question banks are a really great resource if you are, or if you're a faculty member, if you have multiple quizzes with the same questions or very similar questions. They help you to stay organized so that you're not just trying to rebuild quizzes over and over again. So for example, I have a few faculty members that I help to create question banks because they have chapter quizzes throughout the semester, and then they utilize some of those chapter quizzes in a midterm and final exam. So that way we don't have to go through and try to recreate the questions. I can simply pull the questions from the banks. Another reason to use question banks is that it does make the questions editable prior to making the quiz. So you can type them up, or if, so at Creighton we use Respondus to help essentially upload or import question banks from a Word document. So that makes it much easier, especially for banks that are over 100 questions. And if you haven't made your quiz yet, you can edit those questions and change the point value system and do whatever you need to do before you make that quiz. However, keep in mind, once the quiz has been created and those questions are in the quiz, if you choose to edit them, it won't update back in the bank. So that's something to also keep in mind. I always recommend to the faculty I work with to start in the bank itself prior to making any sort of changes in the quiz. So I'll start off by creating questions in a bank, just so you can kind of see how that goes. And then I'll create the quiz and I will show you how to do different types of things with those questions. So I'll show you how to do grouped questions, for example. Oops. Okay, so let me go over to, so I'll be working in my sandbox, and the sandbox is just basically an example course that Creighton created for me as one of their instructional designers. So I know in previous presentations, in previous quiz presentations, you can get to the quizzes or make quizzes in a lot of different ways, but if you're starting off with question banks, the only way to get to them is to actually come down here to the quizzes tab on the left. And by using these three dots right here, you can click on Manage Question Banks. Now I have a whole lot of question banks, so I'll just go ahead and create a new one. And I'll just call it Canvas for now. Once you are in the bank itself, you can add questions just as if it was a quiz. You have the same options for the format and style. So this first question, I'll just leave it be as a multiple choice. And I'm not going to change the point value because that can be done. Sorry about that. That can be done in the quiz itself. So I'll just go ahead and type in a question. Like I said, same formatting as the quiz itself. Perfect. And what I really like about the quiz creator, or the question creator, I should say, is you don't always have to put the correct answer first. You can have it be the second one if you'd like. You just have to indicate it using the green arrows here. And always click on the blue update question button. I can't tell you how many faculty that have called me in a panic because they worked so hard creating all their questions and there are just no more questions. And then I will make true or false. Again, this is just helping to create the examples so that we can see it later. And finally, a file upload question just for some variety. There's no save button in question banks. Once you've made the actual questions, they're just there. They automatically save. If you need to edit, just always click on this little pencil button. If you want to just remove the question, you can just click on this X here. What's great is if you have multiple banks and you realize that you've made a question in the wrong bank, you can move your question to a different bank. Just simply choose it. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and go create a quiz. Now, I like creating quizzes from my modules because it keeps me organized. But of course, there are other ways. I'm going to oops. Sorry about that. Okay. Now I am using classic quizzes, not new quizzes. That's a whole other presenter from earlier today. You can choose whatever settings you want for the quiz itself. So here I usually recommend to put kind of instructions or directions that you want the students to consider. You can choose it to be an ungraded survey or a practice quiz, but for now it'll just be considered graded. The shuffle answers option here, this just means every student will have a slightly different order of the answers themselves. To create a different order of the questions, we're going to create grouped questions. Of course, you can also do time limits. You can allow multiple attempts. You can tell Canvas to keep the average or the highest attempt. You can let students see their quiz responses. This is the default setting. If you don't want the students to be able to see their correct answers or only show them after a certain amount of time, here's where you can tell Canvas what day you want that to happen. You can also do show one question at a time. This option is very helpful if you know there are students that have unstable internet connectivity, because when students are taking the quiz, if the questions show up on the screen one at a time, when a student chooses the correct answer, Canvas will then save that response. If, however, all the questions pop up all at once, Canvas won't actually save those responses until the student hits submit. So that's something to keep in mind if you know that there's going to be some sort of internet issues. And of course, you can assign and put the due dates and the availability dates for students as well. But to get to the actual crux of the issue, we're going to go over to questions. You can create questions right into the quiz, and they'll pop up just how I had it. For right now, just to show a little bit of a difference. Okay. So to pull questions from the question bank, if you already know you just want all the questions in your quiz, you're just going to click Find Questions. Now, like I said, I have access to a lot of banks, so I just have to scroll around until I can find my bank and go ahead and hit Select All. Right now, I'm not going to put them into a group. I just want to show you how to add the questions in. And there they are. Here's where I recommend faculty go ahead and change the point value system, or the point value worth. But again, keep in mind, if you make any edits here, it won't go back to the question bank. Creating grouped questions is very good if you want the order of the questions to be different for the students. So let's say there are 50 questions available and you want students to take a quiz of only 40 questions, but you want them to be different. Making a question group is the best way to do it. So I usually start off by creating the group itself. So we'll call this group R. And you choose how many questions in that group that each student is going to have. So each student must respond to 2 of the potential questions. So they'll receive 2 potential questions and how many points. And then I just take a group. Okay, so then here I go back to find questions, choose my bank, and then I tell it which group. And here they are. One other thing to keep in mind is that you can change the order of the questions. So if you don't care whether students have a different order of questions, you can always just click, hold, and drag and move the questions around. You can also move a question that you created into a group by doing the same thing. Just like that. Okay. And then of course, always hit the save button. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and ask if there are any questions from anyone.
I think everybody's good. I answered one question privately, but other than that, I haven't gotten any questions in the chat.
It looks like I got a private question asking, do test bank changes update questions in new quizzes? So the new quizzes that are rolling out, there's a lot of differences between that one and the classic. So right now you cannot move questions from a bank you created in classic over to the new. Your best bet is actually you could export all that data, but it might actually be easier to start just within the new quizzes and create your questions that way. But if there are no other questions, then I do want to just show really quick, and if you were in my previous presentation, I did mention that one way to keep your content organized for students is to utilize pages. So I just want to show how to link to the quiz that I just made. So I've already got the title of the quiz. So I just highlight it and come over to this link. And because it's already a course content, you just choose course link. And then you just choose the quiz. And always wait until the yellow highlighting goes away before hitting save. Sometimes Canvas needs a little bit of time for the information to save, basically. And there you go. Excuse me. So that's how the quizzes are created, some of the settings of quizzes, and how question banks can be utilized to kind of keep yourself organized, keep the questions organized, and how to pull those questions into quizzes. So I'm going to go back over to my slides. Like I said at the very beginning, Canvas changed some of the URLs, so I made sure that these are the most recent links to the quiz informational page and the question bank informational page. And these resources will kind of walk you through the process of what I just actually said. So, sorry about that. Are there any other questions?
So there's a question in the chat that says, can you show how to make a question bank from other quizzes that you have already created?
Sure. Okay, let's go over to quizzes. So I do not know of a way, I don't think there's an easy way at least to have questions in, say, this quiz go into the bank I made just now.
So there is, but the question, so questions that you build that aren't associated with a bank live in a place called unfiled questions. And that's why when you're building your question, so if you would just click on one of those quizzes or one of the quizzes and open up a question for just, I'm sorry, I totally jumped in just to, so if you click into your question, and this is what I tell my people, if they're not to the point where, so see where you have it set where it says question there in the top left. If you could edit that question for 1 second, yep, just edit. So what I tell my people when they're creating quizzes, that blue box right there, that is your identifier or your indicator. So if you want to go and like, say, for example, you're just building quizzes and like say maybe in a month from now you're ready to organize your question banks. I tell people this blue box, that helps you to identify that later. So a lot of times I'll have teachers say like chapter 1, or maybe that's the standard that you're using. So maybe for high school, it's 8.2.3. But that lets you later take all those questions you built that live in that unfiled question bank and move them really quickly to a bank outside of that unfiled space. So that's how I do it with my teachers, but you can move them, but you have to have the identified question. If you don't have them identified, they all say question, and then it's just kind of a mess.
The other thing that I have, I certainly agree, and thank you for sharing that. I will take that and share it with my team as well. The only concern I have is there have been a couple of times where a question has not shown up in the unfiled bank for some reason, but you are right. Most of the time they do live there, so you can pull from that unfiled bank. I can show how that would work. So going back to the banks. So like down here, I have 23 unfiled questions. So these are just random questions that I've made. So if I want to move it, let's say I want to move this one into the Canvas, I just choose it, choose the bank, but I still want to keep a copy in this unfiled bank, and then I just hit move, and it will exist in my Canvas bank. Any other questions?
I also posted the session evaluation in the chat. So if you have a minute to give us some feedback, we'd sure appreciate that. If you can look at the chat, I did post that just a few minutes ago.